then, so there's not a lot that you need to do this job, and it can be quite daunting at first, especially for your child's guitar, especially if it's their pride and joy. What I would say is having new strings on a guitar, fresh strings, really helps them want to play, and it keeps the longevity of them being interested in that particular guitar. The tools that I'm using is one of these. This is a string winder. Okay, you can get these really cheap on Amazon. My string winder has the snips on, so you can synergize that tool by having it a pair of snips, and you snip the strings. It's a nice to have. So you can use you know, wire trimmers if you need to. But the key thing here is my little string winder. This one has a smaller machine head slot for electric guitars, and then a bigger one for acoustics. And there's a little thing on it here to pull pegs out if you're doing acoustics. I have done a video on acoustic guitars before, so you can see that. This guitar here is quite small. It's an Ibanez Micro or Micro, and it's great for children to play. They can get their little hands on them. And what I've got here are some strings. So strings come in numbers. So when you're ordering your strings, two things to consider initially. One is the size of the strings, or the gauge, and that will indicate whether they're thin strings or thicker strings. So normally what I look at is the lowest number there, 9. So that would mean that this lowest string would be a 9 gauge, and it would be a thinner string. They go right down to 7 gauge, and they go right up to things like 13 for an electric guitar. Okay, for your lowest one, and then your top number is what thickness your thickest string is. So 42 is relatively light. These are known as super light strings, and you can go even lighter, so you can go to, you know, a 7 gauge, like I said, or an 8 gauge, all the way up. I recommend light gauges for children's hands because they're so much easier to press down. If you give them heavier strings, it's harder to press down. Okay, so that's it. The other consideration is, do you want your strings to be coated? So coated means the material they make Gore-Tex out of, you can coat the strings will come with this coating, it's like a really thin plastic over the strings, and it tends to only have a small effect on the sound of the guitar, but it means that the strings feel fresher for longer, especially with kids not necessarily having clean hands all the time when they play guitar. I know I was terrible for it as a young 8-year-old guitarist. You know, my hygiene wasn't spot on. When I kept playing guitar with dirty hands, the guitar strings got sticky and they wore out quicker. So these strings, this brand here, they do cost almost twice the price of a normal pack of strings. However, they last more than 3 times longer. So I recommend getting coated strings, but it's all preference. So let's move on to how to do this. So you start by taking the strings off. Okay, and with a guitar like this, there's a bridge here. You can take them all off at once, or you can do them one at a time. If you've got something with a tail piece, like a Gibson type bridge, you could take one off at a time and put one back on at a time, that's fine. And all I'm doing here is I'm just putting this into the slot and winding the machine head. So I'll show you here. So I put my string winder on, I can put it on the thinner one, slots on, and I just turn it. If you turn it clockwise, it should undo the string. And I'm going to you can either do them all in one go, or like I say, you can do half and half. I'm going to do them all in one go for the purposes of this, because I am going to do a little bit on how to clean the guitar, which is a nice little thing to do, especially for your kids, and they have a nice fresh guitar to play. You say, yeah, imagine if your room was tidy as well. Tidy rooms, tidy guitars, everybody's living the dream. So what I've done, I haven't undone the string completely, but I have undone it so that the string is creating a lot of slack at the head, at the machine head. So if I look at this, strings are quite loose now, and what you can do because of that, you can just pull them out. You don't need to unwind them, you're just wasting time. So I can just pull them all out like this and just throw them out the way. See this one, I can't quite pull that off yet, so I'm going to just untighten it again a bit more. There we go. Okay, great. Okay, and now we're down to the bridge section. So I've just got a load of strings flapping everywhere now. What I'm going to do is just straighten these ends of the strings out a little bit just to help them. And then it's a case of pushing that string through the bridge. Okay, pushing the string through the bridge. And then out the other side is the string. So I can go ahead and pull that through. Okay, and that's as simple as that. But once I've pulled my string out, it's good practice to just wind it up again and loop that through. With children's guitars and strings, I keep the old ones if I can, because they can break, and if they break, they have to wait, they can't practice. So what you can do is, if you've kept some of your strings, you can put an old one back on. You'll get them by. Kind of like having a spare tyre. Remember them? Spare tyres in your car. My cars still have them because my cars are so old, but newer cars tend to have that spray foam thing. It doesn't really work on these. Right, so pull that through. There's no spray foam-esque solution for guitars, unfortunately. So tied up, and I'm going to just keep them. Now you can, what might be an idea when you're doing that sort of thing, is keeping them in the packets where your strings come from. So when you've got, say if you put your strings in order like this, so when you're putting them to one side, you put them in a certain order, you will be able to just put them in the corresponding packets in size order. And then if you break an E string, you can go to the E string packet and there will be your E string. Just makes life a little bit easier, and that's what parenting sometimes needs. Okay, that's done. So at this point you can skip to putting new strings on if you're not interested in cleaning guitars. But I'll do a real quick bit about how to do this, because this is, to me, an important section. What I'm going to do, I'm going to get a little rag. So this is a cloth. This came with a guitar polishing kit, but any old cloth will do. Microfibers are perfect. What I'm going to do is just whip any dust off the guitar. I'm not going to necessarily rub the guitar much. I'm just whipping out and wicking any loose dust off it. That's the priority. Okay, and then what you can do, if you're into that kind of thing, you can buy some guitar polish. This is Dunlop 65. I recommend that for polishes, for finishes like this. Really simple process. You get your rag and you just spray a bit onto it and just rub the guitar around. Little guitars are great because you clean them real fast. And you don't want to be adjusting these, so whatever you do around there, I'd be quite gentle, just because you don't want to be moving the fine parameters that are in place with your bridge. I'm just going to clean this bit. This is a fretboard. This is where all the grime tends to go, and I don't mean grime music. I mean, you know, back when grime used to just be a state of muckiness before it become a universal language that connects the way things are going on the streets. Just using a finger and each fret. Do a bit more on here. There are other materials that work really well for this kind of thing. So you can get a lemon fretboard polish. This is it, and this works great. You don't have to do this. What it does, it adds a bit of moisture to the fretboard. This is a maple fretboard, so it probably doesn't need it, but I'm just curious to see what will happen, because it works great on my rosewood guitars. It makes the whole thing feel lovely and loved. This area of focus here is this bit of Ibanez, I find, tend to get quite dusty at the top. One of the things I've noticed as well whilst doing this is that the string tree at the top of my guitar here has come loose. So one of the things I'm going to just do before I put this together is address that. Just giving the machine heads a little check, because stuff can come loose over time, so just check these. Just check them all, see if they've come loose. And if they have come loose, you can get get the toolkit out. Right, that's annoying me that is that needs to be tightened, so I'm just going to get a screwdriver. Okay, so I've noticed here, just on this fretboard, on the headstock, that this has come loose. So I'm just going to tighten up that string tree. Okay, done. Okay, so now I've cleaned the back, sorry, the front. I'm just going to pop it over. I'm using the ironing board. It's great for guitars, and I'm using some kind of cuddly toy from the said child's room. I'm just going to do the back. Places to focus on are the neck. Again, rub it on. Mr. Miyagi, wax on, wax off. Next is the strings. So the strings come out in order. So they literally come out of the pack in smallest string order at the back. Flip it over, largest string first. It doesn't really matter how you do it. I'm going to start with the largest string first. It comes out in a loop like that. I start by pushing this end, the sharp end, through and around and around, and it comes undone. This string goes through the hole like that, and then through the bridge and through the saddle. So you can see here it's got to get through this saddle here, and then once it's through you pull it all the way till you feel it stop, and then what I do, I'll pull it all the way out to the machine head. Okay, and what I'm going to do, I'm just going to zoom in a little bit onto that machine head here. Now this is where people get stressed out about it. You can make the biggest mistake. So top tip, okay, pinch the string at the machine head like that, just to keep it tight. Pull down about 1.5 frets. Okay, that's where you're going to start winding. So when you do this, top tip, turn your machine head so that the string hole is going straight through. So if you used to stick a string in, it will just run through in a straight line. You want all your machine heads to kind of start like that. Okay, so let's start with this string. I'm going to put the string through the hole, and we're going to have a straight line there. Okay, and then my top tip is to pinch on the other end to keep the string quite tight. I'm just going to pull along by about 1.5 frets. Okay, and from there fact, we're going to punch the back. We're going to pinch the back of the machine head till it's tight, and then we're going to pull back about a fret. That should be enough to start a wind. And what you do, really simply, is just push that, and this wire will actually make a kink. The string will make a kink. Okay, and all you've got to do then is put a bit of tension on that while you wind it up with the other hand, and you're winding anti-clockwise. Okay, now when his string gets a bit closer, what you do, you pull your string upwards so that it has a kink going up, and then continue to wind. And what you're doing is you're pushing that string to wind downwards, and as soon as it starts to get tight, you just pop it into the nut. You can put your thumb on top of the nut or something, or a finger, and you'll just wind it. Now I've wound this and it's actually made a note, but it doesn't have to be. It doesn't have to be tight. It can be quite a low sounding note. Once I've wound it, okay, you want to have a couple of winds. So in this case it's got 2 winds. Alright, more winds are not necessarily better. You probably want at least 1 or 2. I wouldn't want more than 3, because it can lead to tuning instability. And then once I've done that, I'm just going to snip it. So the 2 tools really, string winder. You can even do it with your hand if you haven't got the tools. It's fine, it just takes a little bit longer to do. And a string snipper. So that's the first one. Do it again. Let's do it all again. So get my string, pull it out, people like to say rinse, repeat, whatever that means. So I've got my string, put that through, back, push it through, should come out. If it doesn't, don't worry. If you start having problems, just push and pull. The front of it, and be gentle, you don't need to force it. If you force it, it'll start bending and then causing you problems. So I recommend just pushing that string a little bit. Should be okay. If you start bending it, you're going to have more problems and it'll be a bit more difficult to fix. So just do it gently as you do it. So there we go. That one's gone in. Let's check this is lined up. So is this lined up? Oh, hold on. Check this is lined up. Yes. Push that through. Okay, I'm going to pull it all the way through so it goes nice and straight. There we go. Hold it at the machine head part, so just hold it there. Pull it down about a fret. And then just hold it and just push it down so it doesn't move, and then just, you could either twist it up like that, or you could use your string winder. So I'm going to use my string winder because it's a bit easier and a bit quicker. Pull that up. Done. Snip it. Now the ends get everywhere, so I recommend binning them quicker, especially if there's animals in the house. You don't want them getting involved. Right, this next one has this on it. This is called a string tree, and the string just has to go under it like it did before you started this journey. So you're doing the same thing really, but just with the string tree involved. So I'm going to push this through gently. The more gentle you push it through, the better. And I've noticed that I've pushed it through the wrong one, so I'm going to push it through again. So I'm going to push this through the next one. And the really easy thing once you've started this process is you're just going through the next string. It's important that all the strings are at the same gauge. I would say another thing about strings to know is whatever your guitar is using, keep to the same gauge unless you want to set it up. So if you're changing string gauges, it's a bit like motor oil. If you're changing oil type, you probably want to flush the system. With your guitar you have to set up the intonation again. So now we're at a stage where we've put the strings on. If I strum it, sounds awful. Yeah, because it's not in tune. So there's a couple of things you can do here. Now I tend to tune before I stretch the strings. Stretching the strings is a very important part of the process. So I'm going to use a tuning app. Okay, there's a couple to choose from. Guitar Tuner is a good one by Musician, and the Fender tuning app is also very good, but there's lots. And you can use Natural Tuner. Now this one is set to auto, which is great because it will pick up whatever note is going on. If it's not set to auto, it will expect you to choose a string. Now here's a little trick with things like this. If you press this E here, you'll actually make the sound that you're aiming for. So that's my low E, yeah? So I can listen to this. Right, does that sound higher or lower? It's higher, isn't it? So if I press that, there we go. I've managed to tune that down and get it to where it needs to be. Now I'm not going for perfection right now because I'm going to have to stretch the strings. They're going to go out of tune again in a minute. So I need to press on the next one. Is it higher and lower? Higher or lower? Okay, it was higher. Next one. Next one. Next one. Last one. It was lower. Okay, I'm going to put it onto auto for now. And I'm just going to stretch the strings. So one of the ways you can stretch the strings, if you haven't got a string stretcher, which you don't need, but they're nice to have, they make things go quicker. What you do, you put your thumb or a finger on the first fret and just pull the string a little bit. And you do it again on the second string. And what we're doing is we're pulling the strings. And quite often I'll have a young musician come to me, normally for lessons or something like that. They'll come to me and they'll say, "My guitar keeps going out of tune." I'll say, "Have you got new strings?" I'll say, "Yes." And the strings haven't gone through this process of just being pulled. So I'm just going up. First I went up every fret, now I'm just doing on the dots. Just a little bit of a stretch. Okay, now if I play that, it's gone really low again. I've gone back up to E. And the other thing you can use is one of these. This is a string stretcher. So basically you put the strings into the stretcher and you just move up and down like you're ironing. And if you want it to just not be going out of tune again, you just keep doing this process. You rinse and repeat. So you just keep repeating it.
Don't forget to subscribe.
There you go. just because there's metal involved and it has to stretch. Every time I do it, it gets a little bit better. So that's pretty much the same now. So I would then stretch each string. If you've got a string stretcher, it's very quick. If you haven't, you have to go through every single fret. It's your choice. If you've only got one guitar and you're changing strings not very often, then it probably doesn't justify it. I have to change strings a lot because I've got loads of guitars and I do use them. If I don't use a guitar for a year, I tend to sell it. I've got on average about 12 guitars at a time because they all do different jobs. Just another stretch and then just tune. There we go. Thank you for watching. If you have any questions, just leave them in the comments, I'll answer them.